All right, Dr. Walshaw, so whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Well, lovely to see some people here today and lovely to see some faces. I like that too. Hi, I'm Patty Walshaw. I'm from UCLA and I am a professor assistant professor in psychiatry. I'm a psychologist myself. I specialize in both neuropsychology, but I also do some therapy, things like that. So that's kind of who I am. Um, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about stress and coping, and especially during like all the things that are going on with us right now. To name one of them, it's COVID-19, and we have this huge pandemic that's just like one thing out of many that is happening right now. Um, I'm going to have a few slides that I'm going to show, but mostly I like to have this hour be just about Q&A too, like answering questions and things like that and helping people out. So I'll go through a few of my slides, but really I'm definitely want to hear your questions and anything I can help you with and talk about. So let me go through a few slides. Let me just pull up my slides here. And all right, so we have, I'm going to talk today about stress and coping, like I said, COVID-19, how you dealing with it. It's a stressful time for everyone. So, um, I think, sorry, one thing I have to figure out is how to advance my slides. Okay, here we go. So these are stressful times, right? Um, you know, like I said, there's so many things going on, so much out there. I first want to talk about stress and burnout, right? Because they're very different things. Stress is something that comes upon us when we're actively kind of engaged in something right away, and we have to kind of deal with it right away. And these are kind of the characteristics of stress, right? So these would be things like actually over engaging in things. So this is when you first had COVID-19 hit and all of a sudden you're like checking all the like Twitter accounts and you're like on the CDC website and what's happening and things like that. That's stress. Your emotions are kind of heightened, they're overreactive. It produces a sense of kind of urgency and hyperactivity, like you're really energized, you're going a lot, but you can still have a loss of energy in that, because what happens is that as this goes into kind of overdrive, you start to have fatigue a lot. You find yourself very fatigued. You can't kind of, you're getting more tired than you usually are, and you're kind of like, this is super weird. This tends to kind of lead to more anxiety disorders, things like that, anxious feelings in us. And the primary damage of stress is physical. So when we have a lot of stress, we get things like stomach ulcers and, heart issues and things like that. These are kind of things that weigh in on us when we have a lot of stress. And again, that this is something that can lead to early death. If you have a consistent amount of like stress in your life, that can actually lead to early death for you in the long run, in the long run. This is a little bit different than burnout, right? So burnout it's almost like when stress has gone too long, we tend to get a phenomenon called burnout happening, right? And this is characterized by actually more of kind of like a disengagement, right? So eventually, I don't know if anybody's felt this, but you're kind of like, I'm kind of over it all. I'm done with it. I'm feeling a little bit flat. Like I used to be kind of like anxious and excited about this and everything, and now I'm just kind of like, I can't even like think about it right now, right? The phrase I can't even has come out of my mouth a lot of times in the last few months, right? It produces a lot of like helplessness. You feel like and nothing's going to change, like nothing can be done, kind of like a hopeless feeling, loss of motivation, ideals, hope, things like that, leading to detachment, depression. And the primary damage for this is more emotional. This is more kind of emotional damage in the burnout sense. And again, in some people, it can make their life seem even not worth living. And this is an important phenomenon to kind of watch out for, because this happens over time. And I don't know if anybody can see the difference between these two, but this may have been more how you felt in March related to the pandemic, and this may be how you're more feeling now related to the pandemic in November. And so self-reflection is really important. Okay. It's really important to kind of figure out, okay, what is going on for me right now? I like to say, kind of taking your psychological pulse, right? Um, we don't often do this. We don't often take time to kind of self reflect and figure out how we're feeling. We focus a lot of times on body systems and body health and how we kind of come off and are, is my stomach hurting? Is my head hurting? Things like that. These are actually all good body cues that can tell you that you're stressed out as well. I think one of the hardest things about COVID-19 is that a main symptom of COVID-19, which is that shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, is actually one of the common symptoms in anxiety. And so we had a lot of people initially who were presenting thinking they had COVID-19. Really, they were having a lot of anxiety related to the stress of everything going on in life. So really kind of focusing on, what are my body cues telling me? Are they telling me that I'm stressed? Am I having more like reflux than usual? Am I having more headaches? Am I just fatigued? Am I just, things like that? That could be a sign of physical illness. A lot of times though, it's a sign of psychological stress and burnout and things like that. Also figuring out exactly what is stressing you out is really important. And do you feel like you have control over your stressors? This is a really important factor, because when people don't feel like they have control, this is where you get feelings of things like helplessness and things like that, depressive feelings that start to happen because you just don't feel like you can control anything anymore, right? So here's just a list of common current stressors right now. This is a short list, if you will. Um, you know, uh, One is the main kind of general fear about COVID, right? Safety, infection risk, anxiety. Do you hang out with these people? Are they safe? Can we socially distance with them? Things like that. Am I okay seeing them, but I don't want to be risking myself? Things like that. Another big stressor, especially for patients with epilepsy, is that they have difficulty, like, do I seek medical care during COVID? Do I go in? Do I have a phase 1 study done in the hospital? Do I have phase 2, or do I have surgery happening? Do I even go in and have a scan or an EEG happening, right now? And that's something that's a big stressor for patients right now, because and we have actually a decrease in people taking care of themselves and taking care of their kind of chronic illnesses, because they have hesitancy to go see the doctor. It's nerve-wracking to go into a doctor's office right now. There's obviously a lot of things around COVID, like whether or not you've had changes in finance, living situations, your childcare, whether or not your kids are going to school or not, what to do with that, how to create a new routine around all these different things. There's all these kinds of systemic racism and racial inequities and things like that are coming up even more than usual, potentially now, because I think it's the awareness of it is so heightened, which is a wonderful thing. Isolation and loneliness and grief are happening, missing your important life events. We have holidays coming up, and people this is a really kind of tragic thing to think about, spending holidays without family and things like that. The upcoming election, let's just call it the elephant in the room. It's tomorrow. If you weren't thinking about it, I don't know what planet you're living on, because I don't know if you maybe never ever watched TV or don't know anything, but that's a big stressor for everyone on top of all these other stressors. So this is a cumulative effect. It's not like that replaces the stress of COVID-19. No, it's all a cumulative thing here.
About the donkey in the room.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to go one way or the other here, but if you live in California, you have things like fires and things like that to worry about. If you live on the East Coast, you have things like hurricanes. There's a lot of things going on right now that we have to be worried and stressed out about. And most people feel it. This is just a sample of data from COVID-19 a little bit earlier in the pandemic. And, I think to have somebody say that they're not stressed out about this and they're feeling okay was a really small minority of people that actually felt okay, had no distress. They weren't anxious or depressed. They felt very comfortable. The grand majority of people, however, felt a significant amount of distress or uncomfortableness related to returning to levels. This is at the beginning of the pandemic. I don't have data from now, but it's really, and it's important to notice that other people, more people were drinking more, taking prescription medications for non-medical reasons, drug use, things like that. These are all things that people oftentimes use to cope with stress. So it's important to kind of recognize when these are coming up and how they might be affecting other people. This is some information that they had on Twitter that was related to kind of just trends in, word expression, right? And so sentiment, kind of whether or not positive sentiment was kind of tracking. So the green bar is last year and the red bar is this year. But you can see that like stress, right? Words tracking stress and things like that, anxiety, loneliness. These are things that are shooting up across just people's use of the words over time. And this dotted line in the middle is representing the day that national emergency was declared. This is just, it's coming out in everybody. And again, that's another thing to kind of be aware of, is that you're feeling the stress of it. But when you go on social media, you're also reading about the stress of it. More and more people are talking about it, things like that. So, which sometimes actually increases your stress. It doesn't actually help it a lot of the time. So that's a big thing to be aware of. I think the biggest thing in these times is really to develop good coping skills. This is something that psychologists have known about for a long time, but this whole situation has made everybody have to become aware of these things, right? And so one thing to do is really to stay updated, so you want to stay updated on kind of the news and things like that, but really to limit yourself, take a break, limit social media. This is a marathon, we've all discovered. I think at the beginning when my child's school told me, that we'll be closed for like 2 weeks, I'm thinking, I don't think so. And so to think of it, this is more like a marathon rather than a sprint. So you really need to take time to take breaks, limit yourself, pace yourself along this track, get moving and get outside. Regular exercise is a wonderful thing, right? And sunshine is really key to everyone's health, right? Obviously use sunscreen, don't go out for too long, but walking around your neighborhood, just simple walking. You don't have to, nobody has to be running 6 miles a day or anything like that. This is just moving your body. You can take virtual yoga classes. You can do all kinds of things. There's virtually any virtual class you can want at this point, right? You got virtual kickboxing and yoga and whatever, So, get out, do some things, get your body moving as much as your doctor allows you to. That's a good thing to do. Also do things that make you happy. These are little things like snuggling with a pet, taking a warm bath, reading, learning a new hobby. I got out and I was like, I'm going to garden a little bit, right? Tried a little garden, get a little dirt out there. That was a wonderful thing too. Be mindful and savor. These are other good things to do. So savoring is this phenomenon where you really try to take stock of the moment when something good happens, right? So this would be something like, and mindfulness is a little bit like this too. Mindfulness is being aware of yourself and your body in the moment. And it's kind of being able to kind of take stock of what's happening, where you are, what your body feels like in the moment. If everybody's okay, I'd like to do a little exercise with this, if that's okay. So what I'd like everybody to do, and I'm just going to trust that you're doing this if your screen is black, but is to close your eyes. So everybody close your eyes for a minute, okay? And I want you to take a deep breath, okay? So in and out. Okay, again, in and out. And now I want you to just pay attention to what is going on around you. So I want you to feel the seat that you're sitting on right now. What does it feel like? Is it hard? Is it soft? What do your feet feel like on the ground? I have my fuzzy slippers on right now, so I feel a little bit fuzzy in them, but they're kind of warm. I'm sitting on a harder chair. I have my hands on a desk. It's kind of wooden and it's hard. It's a little bit warm because it's in the sunshine. I can hear a leaf blower outside, right? I can also hear maybe somebody in my house taking a shower. I think I hear the water running. This is a mindfulness exercise, okay? So you can open your eyes again. So that's just a very simple version of it. But basically what it is it's taking stock of where you are, where your body is in the moment. You can only do it. You only have to do it for a few minutes, 30 seconds, whatever you want. But really it's just taking that moment to just like center yourself and center where you are, center your senses around what's happening, right? And kind of literally. So what did I hear? What do I feel? You know, things like that. How does my body feel on the actual surface I'm sitting on? Things like that. That's what mindfulness is. And savoring is when you kind of do something where you take stock, but actually just enjoy it more than you even would. So, if I'm having a long day, I might walk outside and just sit in the sunshine and just feel the sunshine on my face and just think like, wow, this is such a wonderful warm day today. I can just feel the sunshine on my face and I love it, or taking a bite of a delicious meal that you're having and you're just like, oh, this is like the best, whatever it is that you enjoy eating, really savoring. And actually it shows that we've done even studies with like imaging on our brain that shows that when we do this, it actually activates areas in our brain that are responsible for kind of self-reflection and self-monitoring and actually reduction of anxiety and things like that. So this is a really good thing to do. Good things to do would be things like connecting with others. I can't stress more than anything being social. This is really important, especially for preventing depression, having good social connections, and it can be with whoever. It doesn't have to be with a lot of people. Even just one person that you kind of regularly talk to would be a good thing to do. And also supporting other people. We're all going through a lot right now, and having other people know that you're there to support them is a good thing too, and it makes you feel good. I think another important thing is creating good boundaries for work and home. This is something that is very hard to do. I'm in this room right now. It is literally a spare bedroom in my house. I will walk outside and I will be done with work, right? That is a very difficult thing to kind of recognize. I no longer have a commute home, and then I have time to kind of decompress for the day. And I need to kind of set a good boundary between people emailing me all night long and me actually just being at work and being at home. And I think that's we all found ourselves in this like work at home situation, which some people had mastered for years and many of us had not. And I think this is something that we need to recognize, that this is something that can be a stressor for us and that we can do to kind of help reduce stress in us, is have a good boundary between those things. The last thing would be sleep, right? Sleep is very important. It's really important for your brain. It's important for your mind, for your cognitive abilities to be able to remember things, pay attention, things like that. It's good to prevent things like anxiety, depression. And it's good to remember to recognize when you're not sleeping well. I think that's something that kind of creeps up on us a little bit more slowly than we think. And we kind of always don't necessarily recognize, wow, I've been waking up in the middle of the night the last couple of weeks. I didn't really realize that. Or I've really been having trouble falling asleep, or I've been waking up earlier in the morning than I want to. That's a really common one as well. And I can't get back to sleep. Those are all sleep disruptions. And there's something, there are things to do where at a certain point, if you have trouble kind of using various skills like meditation and, not using your phone. I know a lot of us are like, beep, beep, beep in the middle of the night, like right before we go to bed. That's not the best thing for your brain. Actually turning your phone off, all electronics, for the hour before you go to sleep is the best recommendation. It's the blue light. Our brain doesn't like it. It doesn't like us to sleep with it. Other things you can do is kind of reduce, no exercising right before bed, let your body get settled, things like that. Good meditation exercises are good. But if you do notice that you're having still trouble sleeping after all this, it may be a good idea to talk to your doctor and just let them know kind of what's going on for you. Here's some apps I just kind of included. These are apps that sometimes can be helpful for dealing with stress, anxiety, things like that. This is like, I am by no means I'm like endorsing anyone in particular, and there are other ones out there that I'm sure are really wonderful. These are ones that I just in particular know. There's like a depression CBT self-help guide app. There's a UCLA app that's about mindfulness, and it actually goes through like our mindfulness awareness research center that is, audio guided meditations and teaches you how to do mindfulness. These are all apps that are just available in the App Store. So there's Headspace, meditation tool. There's one called COVID Coach, kind of about supporting self-care and overall mental health during COVID. Another thing is kind of really getting support. So if you need people to connect to, this is social support. These are social support groups that are out there. This is one example of one. I know Epilepsy Group has one, but there's also this, Beyond My Battle group that is for patients that have, long-term illnesses and disabilities. There's a patient group. There's also a care partner group as well. And this is for anybody. This isn't specific to epilepsy, but is it anybody who needs it, who has these kinds of things for any kind of disability or illness, right? So that's what they're kind of, working around. Sorry, I lost my mouse here. There we go. So the one thing to consider is, I'm feeling kind of low and kind of bummed out. I don't feel like doing much and things like that. When does it kind of reach that tipping scale of depression? When do we start to kind of worry about this? The reason I talk about this is that the rate for depression and epilepsy is higher than it is in the general population. It's up to even half of the patients who have epilepsy have depression. Higher in males than females, and it's actually higher in patients who have mesial temporal lobe epilepsy than in other types of epilepsy. This is important to kind of recognize that if you have epilepsy, you actually are at a bit of a higher risk for developing depression. So it's even more a good idea to keep aware of what's going on and what's going on for you and your body, and kind of tracking these things so you can get help quickly. The earlier we treat depression, the easier it is to kind of manage. It's when it goes on longer that we can still manage it, but it's a little bit harder. But some of the AEDs can increase irritability. So things like Keppra, for instance, for some patients can cause a lot of irritability and low mood and things like that. So there are other medications that can also do similar things. So it's just also to kind of be aware of whether or not your medication is causing any kind of your low mood, and talking to your neurologist about that. And it's, like I said, depression is a recurrent thing. It's episodic. You go through a period, and even if you don't treat it naturally, eventually it will get better. This is what happens. But what we know is that it's recurrent. So if you've had an episode of depression, you're much more likely to have a second episode of depression, even if you've had a period of wellness for quite a while. And so that's one thing to kind of really good, early recognizing the symptoms of an episode is a good thing to do. So here are kind of the symptoms of depression. You can read that yourself. It's not very complicated. This is kind of low mood. You lack pleasure in things. You're irritable more than others. And again, all of these things would be things that would be a change from baseline for you. So example, if you have problems with concentration all the time, that's not probably depression. But if you have all of a sudden a really low mood and irritability and more problem with concentrating than usual for you for a couple of weeks, that's kind of what we're talking about. In general, what we're saying is that if things go on a little bit longer than a week or so, that's probably getting to the problematic area for most people. So probably good to talk to somebody at that point. It's important to note that the cognitive symptoms of depression can mimic cognitive problems in people who have epilepsy, right? So attention problems, memory issues, fogginess, these are all symptoms also of depression. And so don't just write off some of these symptoms as being, oh, that's just part of my epilepsy, because it might be more related to depression, and we could do something about that. So one thing to note is that this lack of pleasure, or what we call anhedonia, this is like that kind of like that meh feeling, like whatever, like that listlessness, that kind of thing, or irritability, it may be the more prominent symptom, particularly in men. So depression isn't always about sadness. It isn't always about melancholy. It isn't always about lying in bed and crying. A lot of times people just feel like things aren't as enjoyable and they're kind of irritable lately. And that can be a full-blown major depressive episode, even though you've never felt sad. So just something to kind of be aware of. So the one thing to think is like when to actually seek mental health services, right? So it's really important that you do seek them out when you need them, and your family members do. And we try to think like when things are pretty severe, when they're persistent and they don't really go away, even if you try a lot of self-help stuff. So we always recommend self-help stuff first, meditation, going for walks, getting out there. But if that stuff isn't doing it for you, this may be something that you want to consider. The nice part is that mental health services have never been easier to access with telehealth now. The benefit is that all insurance companies are currently covering telehealth services for mental health care. And so, and that's not something that's been true in the past. So even if you live far out and there's not a lot of mental health services in your area, you are able to access them, even if the person lives in Los Angeles and you live in Fresno or something like that. This is something that we can do now. Also, if feelings or emotions are getting in the way with things like sleeping, eating, your job performance, they keep recurring, and if they make you feel like you don't want to be here anymore, that's a really good key feature to note that, wow, I should probably talk to somebody at that point. So this ends my slide presentation, okay? And I would love to just be of help and answer some questions if I can. There we go. So does anybody have questions? Okay, I can look at the chat there. I can see what's going on. So let me just go ahead. Let's see. So my son with epilepsy, autism, mito disease, and more has constant stress, communication issues, etc. But now with COVID, most outings, just leaving the house, have been restricted due to immunocompromise. I'm trying to help him through this. I have to be his inner voice out loud to get him to reflect more. And with the RYR2 gene dropped dead of heart attack with extreme bodily mental stress, we try to do a lot more breathing exercises, trying to calm him down, 8 suggestions. We try a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. Okay, well, that's great. I mean, I think it's really good that you are trying some of these CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques for these things. It's really hard, especially when somebody may not understand what you're trying to ask them to do when they need to calm down. And I don't know if your son, I don't know if Christine, if you want to talk at all, you can feel free to say something if you want, but I don't know if he has any kind of intellectual disability or anything like that. But it can also, if he has a language issue or anything like that, that can be really difficult to kind of figure out. Are you Christine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me.
Did you want to speak? Go ahead.
Well, he always has tried to talk, and he does have severe apraxia. The biggest issue for him is just being locked up in a house because of COVID. He can't. We have a adult-sized swing set in our backyard. We try and use that. Try to go for a walk down the street, but really he can't go to the grocery store anymore. He can't go to the mall. He can't go to the beach because people don't wear masks.
Right.
His whole life outside of the building is basically cut off, and it's been months now, because we've been in, just here in LA, but we cut ourselves off in the beginning of March because we saw it coming, and with immune compromise, we knew.
Yeah.
We're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our issue is, what else can we do? We're trying with speech and OT and PT, trying to get activities going on for him here, but we're just the same 4 or 5 people here in our family that do the same thing, and he wants out, and he tends to be an eloper, so he will try to go out anyways. So we have him locked in, like literally locked in.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. He's 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. This is not a child.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So I'm looking at it. I'm trying to treat him more like an adult, give him more choices. It's on a whiteboard most of the time when I can get him to talk to me in detail. But with epilepsy, we had to take away bike riding. We had to take away swimming. And so his world's going smaller and smaller and smaller. Now with COVID, it's like so small.
Right. It's like a pin.
Any ideas of anything else we can do besides to just kind of constantly support him, more things he can do, anything. I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah. I mean, Now, if he has autism, is he very routine based? Does he like that?
No, he's always been pretty much very flexible.
Okay.
He's more of a, because we have a big family. I have 4 kids, and he's the
Mhm.
youngest of the 4. So I have 2 adult other kids living here, and then one's away medical school. But
Mhm.
he basically is he watches YouTube all day, and I do homeschooling with him at the chances I get, and he's going to graduate this year. But other than that, it's, his life is very limited.
Yeah.
And with all his other conditions, the epilepsy just kind of slapped everything right on the top of it. And so we have to let him sleep as long as he can. And he sleeps in chunks of 4 to 5 hours, and he gets up. We have to put him back to bed. So right now he's still asleep right now, and his day won't start for about another half hour.
Hmm.
He's up
Hmm.
till 4 in the morning. So our sleep is trash.
Wow.
And so, and now it's getting dark early. So we lost the
Right.
sunlight. So anything you have to give me, I'll take it.
Yeah, no, that's really hard. I mean, I'd like to note that Amanda said art. That's always a good suggestion. I think,
Yeah.
are there any like, it's really hard because you also don't want your kid only to be online all day or on the
Right.
screen all day. I mean, I think that's a really difficult thing, but it
Mhm.
is difficult to be able to do anything if you're immunocompromised in this kind
Right.
of, is there any like, yeah, I don't know, where do you live? Do you
I
live
live in
anywhere?
Torrance.
In Torrance? Okay.
Yeah.
The only other thing I could say is, are there any like, this may not be a good idea if he's an eloper, but if there's any, does he like hiking or anything like that?
He does, but we're having issues with other people. Like, we went to Yosemite right when it opened back up, because we go
Oh
every
yeah,
year.
no, no.
And well, we did, and it wasn't. I mean, we tried to stay away from everybody. We wore masks and
I
did
think,
that.
yeah, no, but no, I
People
think
are
it's a
really
beautiful place, but
people
people
are
are
really
not.
disrespectful of
Yeah,
other people right now, and they think it's a political statement to wear a mask, and it's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Especially for our family who's immune compromised.
absolutely.
And so
I was
for
thinking
us,
more
yeah.
off beaten path places. So like
Ooh,
not well known
yeah.
parks, and like, I live up in the valley, and there are some like fire roads and stuff like us where you can
Okay.
go for 4 miles and never see another human,
Oh, wow.
especially if you can go at kind of an off time. I know that's hard with his sleep schedule, but
Right.
just to be able to get him out and like, seeing anything but just the four walls, that
Right.
may be
Right.
helpful for him to at least have something else that was stimulating, that, got him, to see
Mm.
something else for the day.
Right. Right. Now we try to think of things like that, and we try to go the paths, because we're short on daylight now also.
Yeah.
And his sleep schedule, because we wake him, he usually has a seizure within 2 to 3 hours of waking. If we wake him up, it's going to happen.
Hmm.
So we let him sleep, but we try to look at the places that are near us. I mean, we're more towards Palos Verdes
Yeah.
and Torrance and Redondo Beach, so we only have beaches, and they're overcrowded, and all the paths, the hiking paths, are pretty much crowded with
Yeah,
people.
I was thinking like Inland Empire, like go somewhere
So
that's
go
like
drive somewhere,
drive,
basically.
yeah,
Okay,
like
okay,
middle of the
okay.
state,
Right,
drive up
right.
395 and like just find like, you know, Bureau of
Right,
Land Management. The one nice part about
right,
California is that we're kind of fairly pocketed in certain areas, but then there's
right.
a lot of land with nothing on it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even if he had just like a big open space to kind of like run and just,
yeah. That's
be,
why he does so well when we go to Yosemite. We actually stay away from everyone and go
yeah,
out, do our off beaten path things and
yeah,
stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anything even more that we can do locally while the sun's still out, before having to, because if I have to drive, I have to stay at a hotel
no,
and
I
all
know,
that kind of
yeah,
fun stuff.
that's not
So,
ideal.
we do art, but he gets upset with that. He likes music. We try to have a dance for him once a month now, where we
Hmm.
get the family in. And right now we have Day of the Dead decorated in my house. And
Hmm.
so with lights up and everything, and so we kind of did that, and we're going to have another one, but I try to have the big kids come and dance with them and stuff, and Zoom people in that, that like family
Yeah,
members and stuff. So he really likes that, but he can only tolerate it for like 15-20 minutes, and then
right,
mitochondrial disease kicks in, and we have fatigue.
right,
And so, we
right.
try to do little things like that, but I'll take anybody's ideas. Housework, doesn't like it. I've tried that. I'm reading you guys' stuff. So I try to think of anything I can to remove them outside of the house, is my
Yeah,
problem,
I
I
was
guess.
thinking, do
So
you have, yeah, I'm trying to think of like something else that you could do outdoors, or, um, I mean, the one nice thing is that, if you feel comfortable with it, as the weather changes, it might be easier to go down to the beach, for instance,
Right, right.
at an off time, because nobody goes to the beach in California once it hits like, 60 degrees. So,
Well, I'm
uh,
hoping that, to get them there while kids are busy at their schooling and stuff.
yeah, like if you could go
But it's
during
like,
school in December,
right,
like,
right, exactly.
that might be something that he would enjoy, and at least it gets him out.
Right. And that's what he's missing right now, because we used to just go walk up on the top of the
Yeah,
strand and just do that. But then people started getting more crowded because everybody was just like not working and locked down. And
right.
then they got out and then they're not wearing masks. I don't want to monopolize your time anymore. I know
No, no,
people.
no. This is a great question, and it is really hard. And your son, he has a lot going on, but everybody's looking for things to do right now because everybody's at home and they're bored and it's
Yeah.
not an unusual situation. So,
Yeah. How often, I mean, sorry, I'm going to jump in one more question. How
Mhm.
often do you see when people are in this type of situation, not just specifically my son, but people who are kind of trapped by their lifestyle, so to speak, um, go slip right into depression? I mean, do you see that a lot where people are trapped in their lifestyle and they can't really change a whole lot due to their circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes more with that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, that people start to experience when they feel trapped, right? So trapped is also a sensation, like a psychological sensation that you either have for yourself or you don't have. Because some people might feel trapped in a situation and another person in the same situation might not feel trapped at all, right? So um, it's really all about kind of perspective and reframing, and that's can be really common. But if you do start to feel trapped, that's a good kind of first warning sign that that might be a direction that you're heading into
I'm
depression.
looking for him. So
Yeah, right.
I'm good. I'm looking for him because he doesn't communicate a whole lot. So I have to like read his gestures and the little
Yeah,
communication he does have. I'm just trying to figure out, where he is, and hopefully he doesn't jump to aggression. We've had that in the past, but
right,
just,
right.
and all this, keep it all down because of the RYR2 gene and keep it all down because of epilepsy and everything
Hmm.
else. It's just,
Absolutely.
trying to monitor that.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you.
Oh, Amanda also said driving around to look at things like lights and stuff.
Yeah, the problem with
Um,
that is he wants an endpoint to get out of the car
oh.
and go in somewhere he can't go.
Oh yeah, no, no.
So, but we're working on that one. But thank you. I
That's all right.
appreciate it. All
That's
right.
all right. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any okay, Cindy asked about chronic depression. So again, if you want to put yourself up, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay too. Um, so go ahead. Sorry, I thought somebody said something. So chronic depression is definitely a thing. We would call it like persistent depressive disorder or dysthymia. Um, Typically, what happens with chronic depression is that it's more of a low-grade depression that lasts a long time. In fact, in order to be diagnosed with that, you have to have it for 2 years consistently without really a break. What this is, it's usually marked by kind of low low motivation, maybe some irritability, kind of chronically, a little bit of a low mood, low energy, things like that, some hopelessness. But again, it's kind of like more of like a long-term slow burn than it is with major depression, which is a very significant drop off a cliff that feels very different from normal, and then a return to kind of feeling normal, which means your baseline, right? So normal is different for everybody. We always take everybody's own baseline as to where they're kind of coming from. But certainly chronic depression can be a thing. It's also very difficult to kind of manage. It would be recommended that somebody who had chronic depression to get some treatment to try to kind of start to work on thinking about things differently. That cognitive behavioral therapy can be very useful in trying to kind of help reframe life and reframe thoughts that you're having, things like that, to kind of um, think of a different way of kind of approaching the world. Because if it's chronic, again, it starts to feel. I've had patients with chronic depression who it feels more just like their personality, actually. Like I just kind of always feel like this. As it happens long enough that can be. It's just this is just me. It's not something that's like a disease or an illness. It's just who I am, you know. But, you know, getting some treatment to help kind of get different thoughts and kind of outlook on life can be helpful to kind of start to move it in the direction of feeling a bit better. That would be the idea. Any other questions or thoughts, or how's everyone doing coping with COVID-19 and everything else that's going on in the world?
Good. Took up a new form of art and have been doing that. So that's been good. And I have my little family bubble, not big, but, and was able to finally pick out the new service dog. So she's just a puppy, about 10 weeks old now.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, we dropped her off at training. So that was exciting. Got to visit her a couple of days ago and see how she was doing, progressing, and yeah, so it's been very interesting the last end of August till now.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Very cool. Yeah, and people, if they don't feel like talking, feel free to like pop in the chat, you know, coping ideas that you've had, coping strategies that you've had. I'm sure everybody would love to kind of learn from them, maybe say, oh, I didn't try that, you know. Feel free to kind of pop in a few, you know. Elizabeth, I saw that you wrote that you've been in DBT for 4 years. That's great. DBT is another type of therapy that can be very useful for especially long-term kind of chronic depression, chronic emotion issues.
One of the things that I learned in one of my groups was to have a self-soothing kit with things in it that make you feel better. It could be things that you see, things that you smell, things, every sense that you use.
Absolutely.
And so I have like all kinds of blue colored stuff because blue is my favorite color.
Awesome.
I have something that smells like coffee in it, even though I can't drink coffee, I can sniff this.
Yeah.
I got like lavender, I've got chewing gum in there, I've got a fiddle thing, fiddle with my hands.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are things that I've found that have been helpful.
And I think that's really good. That's a really common technique in DBT, is to build these kind of like coping boxes, so to speak, you know, and to have stuff in there, because I bet you kind of go to it when you're kind of feeling low, right? That's the whole idea of it, is that when you feel low, when you feel really distressed, if you feel really stressed out, you have a box ready for you to kind of pull out the like good things, you know. And even if it's something sensory, like, you know, a fuzzy thing that you kind of, or the smell of coffee, I like that. That's great. Yeah, probably that'd be a good one for me. I would like that. You know, pictures or whatever, it's, you know, things that are a certain color, you know, things that remind you of something like the ocean or whatever. Those can all be things that can be helpful, and you can really kind of like focus on them in the moment and kind of be mindful and savor them in the moment, to help you with when you're really stressed out, you know. That's a really good technique, and a good one for everybody to use, you know. And I think really the key part of all of this is to not wait until it gets really bad to build things like a coping box or something like that, because it's going to be harder to build it when you're really distressed, when things are really upsetting, you know, when you're really low. Build it now, because this will actually help, because anytime you're stressed, again, all of this is about prevention, right? So think about it like, you know, blood sugar, right? If you had a propensity towards diabetes, right, you would watch your blood sugar and you would take care of it, and you would kind of know to eat certain things, not eat certain things, eat at certain times of the day, take your blood sugar, maybe measure it, things like that. That's kind of what I'm talking about psychologically, right? You kind of are constantly needing to kind of take your blood sugar, your brain blood sugar, your psychological pulse, right? How am I doing? What's going on, right? because what we're trying to prevent is people from getting too low. That's the whole idea. And if you work on it every day, and if you work a little bit on managing the stress all the time, you actually can many times prevent things from going too far down, you know? And it's okay if you can't, but that you are even better equipped to kind of manage it if you do go down, if you are kind of self-aware, if you're kind of aware of your own psychological state and your own stress level. Insight is everything in psychology, right? That's like when I start to do therapy with somebody, the first thing we try to do is get insight. Like, what is it that's going on? Anxiety wise, what's happening? Where's the depression coming from? What are you low about? Things like that. Do you know that you're low? You know, like, how do you know that you're low? How do you know you're feeling anxious? What happens to you? When I'm anxious, I get like a tightness in my chest. I get sweaty. You know, these are all the body cues I get for anxiety. You know, when I get really stressed, I start to have a little bit of like reflux. I start to not sleep too well. I start to get headaches sometimes, you know. And so knowing that you have different cues for different bodily kind of things are really helpful, because that can kind of know, where am I at? What's happening with me right now? What do I need? Do I need to go into that box right now? Do I need to go out? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to get some exercise? You know, do I need to just sit in the sunshine for 10 minutes and let it hit my face? You know, do I need to go pet my cat who's sitting right over there? You know, what do I need to do in this moment to help myself? Do I need a break? That's the other thing, right? You know, the one thing that we do know about social media is that over the long course of everything, social media, while it feels really good when you do it, because what happens is you get a dopamine rush in your brain when you turn on some kind of thing like Facebook or Instagram or something like that, you get this dopamine rush in your brain and it feels good. But it's actually a very short acting thing. And over the long course of time, what we've found is that people actually have lower mental health, that, you know, they have higher depression scores, higher anxiety scores, the more time they spend on social media. And that's a pretty well proven fact, that in the long run, it actually does not very good things for you. While in the short term, it's actually like pushing that button on the, like, you know, winning at the like slot machine, you know, it's like the same phenomenon. It's shooting the dopamine right into your ventral striatum. And it's like, woo, here we go, you know. And, you know, that's something that we have to watch out for, and mind how often you're on social media, and know, you know what, I got to take a break from this. You know, the nice thing is, like, sometimes these iPhones now, you can, like, it shows you how much screen time you've been using that week and whether or not it's up or down from the prior week. It's a good thing to kind of note, and where you're at, and because it's really hard to track how long. Like, I'll be on there sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, it's like an hour. Where's this? What happened here? You know, so that's something.
I'm at a distance from my family and all of my friends, except for a very few. And I'm even at a distance from my church right now because I'm not going there physically. So for me, my phone and my computer are my lifeline. And I have found that I do have to tell myself, okay, it's all right to turn it off at 9:30 so that I can get some sleep.
And I think it's really important for sleep. And there's different ways to use the phone and the computer. So if you are directly communicating with somebody, that's totally fine. If you're scrolling through Facebook and just reading all of the horrifying things that are going on in the world and just like perseverating on them for hours, that's probably not going to be great for the mental health in the long run. And so I totally agree. I think the phone and the, you know, and the computer are really good tools, especially during COVID, for connecting with other people, which is so important. It's really important to kind of do FaceTime, do Zoom. There's an app called House Party, where you can play games with other people like Uno and stuff like that. You know, it's you know, there's plenty of stuff to do that's out there, and you really should connect with other people. So if you're actually chatting, if you're actually talking to other people, that's a wonderful thing to do. And there's nothing wrong with social media. It's just being mindful of how much you're on it, and whether or not it's actually improving your mood, or in the long run, if it's not improving it very much, you know. And Facebook has like an algorithm where it's actually trying to think of what you want to see. So it keeps bringing up the things you want to see. So unfortunately, if you click on a lot of election stuff, all it brings up is election stuff. So I like have to click on like cat videos as well to like manage it and at least give me like election cat video, you know, things like that, right? Get a little bit of something in there, right? I like to watch a little bit of cat videos in there. So anybody else have any questions about coping or managing stress or COVID-19 and how to do all this? You can talk or chat it. That's fine.
Yeah, just for myself, I just find going for a walk and like taking a dog for a walk. Then like one of the goals I have is getting my steps in. So my daily goal right now is 6,000. So making sure I make that. And I have one of the apps that I have a buddy. So you can have a challenge buddy and you have to make 10 days complete together kind of thing. And I try to make sure that I don't miss a day. And the only time that ever really happens is if I have a bad seizure. But other than that, make my goal every day. So like, I don't know.
That's great. Yeah. And you know, that's a good goal for steps. I'm impressed. I need to get 6,000 steps and that's awesome. Yeah, no, I think, you know, and again, it's knowing yourself, like, are you the type of person who needs somebody else to help you get going, right? Are you a self-motivated person to get out there? Or are you like, wow, if somebody doesn't tell me to do this, I'm not going to do it, you know? And knowing yourself, knowing that will help you decide, like, can I know that I can just get out there every day and go for a walk? Or do I need an app or some kind of like, you know, workout virtual thing that I'm doing where I need to show up and be accountable and things like that? And everybody's different, you know? So it's kind of knowing yourself and knowing kind of where you're at and what you need is really the key. Great. All right. Well, are there any other questions? What do we got? Daylio? Oh, a free mood tracking app. That's great. I like that. That's good. Excellent. Very cool. As a mom with well-controlled seizures, I seem so normal. That's great. I don't seem very normal, I don't think, as a mom. So good. Hats off to you, Cindy. How do I remind my family that I need a little quiet and calm and downtime without them making them feel guilty? I think that's a really good question as a mom. And Cindy, feel free to speak up if you'd like to. You don't have to at all. You know, that's a great question and one that moms all over the place are constantly struggling with, I think. You know, the one question I always have for myself as a mom is it me that's thinking people are gonna feel bad if I take a break, or is it them, right? Because oftentimes what happens is mom tends to put more pressure on themselves than they actually need to, you know? And so sometimes if you can say, I just need a break, which can be really hard to find because a lot of times, if you're a mom, even locking yourself in the bathroom to go to the bathroom does not prevent everybody from also coming in and being like, Mom, I need this. Mom, I need this, you know? But, you know, I think even sometimes getting out of the house is a good thing. You know, I have a psychologist friend that said to me, you know, Patty, I'm a better mom because every Thursday on my way home from work, I stop and I get a frozen yogurt for myself and I just sit and I eat it for like 20 minutes, right? And that was such a good phrase because, you know, it showed that, you know, just taking time, even if it was 20 or 30 minutes just for yourself to do something so little and really savoring it makes you realize that it actually makes you a better mom when you are actually taking care of yourself, right? It's kind of that putting on your own oxygen mask before putting on somebody else's, right? Because if you're not able to kind of care for yourself, then you're not going to be able to care for somebody else. And, you know, if you're able to kind of, you know, it's going to come out in other ways, right? It's going to come out as, you know, stress, irritability, I don't know, sometimes I snap at my kid, because I'm like, oh, what, what's going on? But I have to realize, like, wow, what is it in me that needs to take care of myself at the moment? What do I need? I need to go for a walk, or I need to do that. Amanda says my mom goes out with a walking buddy. That's great. Just taking like half an hour to yourself is such an important thing to do, because then you are going to be able to be more available for your kids, and whoever else is in the home. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm not sure. But so, all right, guys, well, it's winding down to the end of the hour. Oh, I like that. My father walks to the mailbox in his retirement community each day. That's great. It's really good. It doesn't take a lot to kind of do something for yourself. Again, these are all coping things. These are all coping strategies. Sometimes I'm on Zoom all day and I'm seeing all kinds of people all day long. And something that just helps me is between Zooms, just going out and standing outside and just kind of like taking in a moment of the fresh air, just for like 3 minutes. And that can mean the world from making me be able to be available and helpful to other people in the next hour. So everybody take a moment for yourself, take time to be good to yourself. We'll all get through this. Okay.
All righty. Thank you so much, Dr. Walshaw.
All right, I'm going to sign off. Okay, it was lovely to be with you guys. Hope everybody is well and feels well and can do things to help themselves feel good.